going to be reviewing chapter 1 of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. This chapter itself takes the title of the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Yes. We're going to be learning about the two dads that Robert Kiyosaki, the main author of this book, had a poor dad. And he actually considered that to be, get advice from two dads who had conflicting opinions about money, about financial education, and about, finance. So he narrated the story about his rich dad and his poor dad. He said that he had two fathers. One was rich and one was poor. One was very educated and intelligent, and that was actually his rich dad. His biological father, while his rich dad was the father of his best friend, Mike, PhD, and completed 4 years of undergraduate, in less than 2 years, to show that his poor dad, who happened to be his real dad, was actually a very intelligent man. He went to Stanford University, the University of Chicago, and Northwestern University to do his full scholarships. He must have been a very intelligent man indeed. But the other father, who happened to be his rich dad, hardly finished. In fact, he never finished the 8th grade. Can you see the difference? Both men were actually very successful in their careers, according to Robert Kiyosaki. They worked very, very hard. Gold financially. Remember, I said, according to him, they were successful in their careers. Not that they were both careers, they both worked very hard, but one struggled financially. And who was the one that struggled financially? You already know by now. Its other eventually became one of the richest men in Hawaii. Sorry, not his father, his rich dad died, leaving tens of millions of dollars to his family, while the poor living bills, debts to be paid up by his children. So basically, this chapter 1 is just telling us the distinctions between his rich dad and his poor dad in the way of their thinking, their mindset, and so on. Why one was poor, in between, choosing from the advice of both of them. Both men were very strong, they were charismatic, they were influential in their own right, and both of them offered him advice. The poor dad believed so much in education, the rich dad believed in education too, but they would not recommend the same course of study. And he said that if only he had one dad, he would have had to reject his advice. And that is the advice of his poor dad. And he would have had to accept the advice of his rich dad. But having two dads just put him like somewhere in between. He wasn't sure until he was able to make up his mind. But thankfully for him, he knew from a very young age that he just had to go with the advice of his rich dad when it comes to money, when it comes to financial stability. Instead of just accepting the advice of one or just rejecting the advice, he started thinking more. He said he started thinking about money and how to find. He was a very, very young boy, but he was already money conscious. No wonder he went on in life to become very rich and successful. The problem is that the rich man was not yet rich at the time that he was torn between their advice. The rich man was not yet rich. He couldn't be called a rich man yet, but he had a very rich mentality. The poor man too was not yet poor, not like his dad was so poor at the time that they were giving him advice. But he could already see a projection in their ways of thinking that this rich dad, even though he didn't have millions in his bank account at this time, by way of his thinking, he's going to be rich. And concerning his poor dad, from the way he was thinking, Robert Kiyosaki could tell that even though this man is not so poor yet, even though he's earning maybe a decent salary, by the way he's thinking, is going to be very, very poor. It's just a matter of time. Because at the time that they were advising him, both of them were actually just starting out in their careers, but they had different points of views about money. For example, one dad would say the love of money is the root of evil, and that's his rich dad. But his rich, sorry, that's his poor dad. Why am I mixing it up? His poor dad would say the love of money is the root of all evil. But his rich dad would say the lack of money is the root of all evil. As in, if you don't have money, you have the tendency to steal, you have the tendency to be engaged in criminal activities, and so on. So, as a very, very young age, it was very difficult getting influenced by both dads because he wanted to be a good son to both of them, but this was not practically possible because they had to accept the advice of one and reject the advice of another when it comes to riches. So he spent most of his private time reflecting, thinking. It still wows me though how a young boy could do that. Do we still have young children who, well, I believe that we have, maybe very rarely, because in his own days too, he must have had other children who were not even bothered, right? So it must have been one of a kind, right? So he would think about it. One of the reasons the rich dad gets richer and the poor, not the rich dad, one of the reasons why the rich get richer and the poor get poorer and the middle class struggle in debt is because the subject of money is taught at home and not in schools. It is taught by parents who don't know any better. Imagine if a poor parent is teaching his child about money. That parent cannot teach what he doesn't know because he cannot see beyond his nose. So already from a very young age, that child is at a disadvantage until the child breaks free from that mentality. That is exactly what happens. If a poor person's financial, if a poor person who already has a poor mindset is teaching other people about money, what is he going to be teaching? He's going to be teaching his mindset. He's going to be transferring his mindset. But if a rich man is teaching his child about money, what do you think he's going to be teaching? He's going to be teaching that child about investment, about how to multiply money, how to make money work for you. So he's of the opinion that money, the subject of money, should be taught in schools, and it is a skill that should be acquired just like we acquire all other kinds of knowledge. Because how come somebody will go to the university to go to become a doctor, to become a banker, to learn about accounting, and then the person is poor in real life? How? What is the school actually teaching? What is our educational system actually teaching? There needs to be an overhaul, really. And this is not even talking from these books. Based on what we also see, there needs to be an overhaul. There needs to be a shift in the way that teachers teach. But then, like I said, they cannot teach what they don't know. If they want to teach about money and other important skills of life, they too must know about it. They must be ready to put it to use, right? So he had two influential fathers and he learned from both of them. He had to think about each dad's advice, and in doing so, he gained valuable insights into the power and effect of one's thoughts on one's life. This chapter also talks a lot about the power of thoughts, about how you think. And I really like his emphasis on the power of thoughts in this chapter 1. He saw the way of reasoning of his poor dad. And by his way of reasoning, his poor dad was already defeated. There was no amount of money anybody could give him. There was no amount of teaching anybody could teach him. He was already defeated in his mindset. And that is the most difficult thing. Remember that we read in Think and Grow Rich that if you can conquer your own mind, then you can conquer yourself. You can conquer the whole world. Because this mind, self, or the thoughts, is the most difficult to conquer. It is even more difficult to conquer it than to conquer a physical enemy. A lot of the time, the enemy that people think that they have is not an external enemy. It is the enemy within. They have not conquered their own negative mindset. They have not conquered their own negative and already defeated way of reasoning. His poor dad would always say, I cannot afford it. But his rich dad would taught him to say, don't say I cannot afford it. Instead, turn it into a question. How can I afford it? Because the moment you say, I cannot afford it, your brain is now programmed to go and rest, to go and sleep, to succumb to that statement. It's a form of alibi. It's a form of excuse to say, I cannot afford it. And then you accept it as your condition. That was the thinking of his poor dad. But his rich dad said, no, 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 don't ever say I cannot afford it. Ask yourself, how can I afford it? How can I afford it? Even though you may not have the physical money to purchase it, but asking yourself that question will now put you to a race to motivate you, to push you to say, this thing that I cannot afford right now, how can I afford it? What job can I do? How can I make money? At least the people that are affording it, they don't have two heads. How are they able to afford it? What are they doing to be able to afford it? The good life that they are living. And can I also do the same? Am I willing to pay the price to afford it? So your brain is going to shut down, just like Mr. Ike said. The moment you say, I cannot afford it, it's a quick way of excusing yourself. It's a very bad alibi. So put your brain to work. Put your brain to work. Exercise your mind. The mind is the most powerful computer in the world. My brain gets stronger every day because I exercise it. The moment you keep asking yourself, what can I do? How can I make money? You're exercising your brain. You're exercising your mind. Don't ever allow your brain to shut down. The moment you cannot afford the good things of life that you so desire, you do yourself a whole lot of harm if you allow your brain to shut down and you resort to fate. You accept it as your destiny. It's a dangerous thing, right? The stronger your brain gets, the stronger you exercise it, the stronger it gets, and the more money you can make. Although both dad worked hard, Robert Kiyosaki noticed that one dad had a habit of putting his brain to sleep when it comes to money matters. He would forbid him and his children from talking about money at the dining table. But his rich dad put his brain to work. He encouraged the children talking about money. Yes, let's talk about money. Let's talk about investment. What is he trying to do? He's trying to stimulate the brain of those children to be thinking about money. I hope we are picking something. This is something that we also need to do for our children. Stimulate their brain to think about money. Stimulate their brain to be business conscious. What can I sell? What can I sell? I was attending a training recently, and one of the facilitators said that when he was about to get into the university, his dad was in a very terrible situation financially. In fact, they were living in a place where they were squatting, as in a whole family. They were squatting. They had no roof over their heads. They were actually squatting. But it was time for him and his younger brother to go to the university. His dad sold the plot of land that he had to send them to the university. The money from that plot of land could only pay their first year school fees. After that first year, they had to hope on God or expect a miracle. But he took that bold step of faith to say, just even enter. Let me sell this plot of land. Because according to him, I remember vividly, his dad said that don't make a permanent decision based on a temporary situation. The fact that they were squatting at that time was a temporary situation. But the education of these children was more like a permanent one. If you could miss it to say, okay, we are squatting, we don't have money, this money from this plot of land, let us use it to eat. Probably the children will become illiterate by now, because this facilitator that I'm talking about is in his 30s, but the money that he controls, as in the amount of money that he controls. So what did he do? He came to his senses that, hey, once this session is over, do you know what is that? Sent them to a private university in Nigeria. Yes, that was how wise the father was. I like that kind of a father. He wasn't thinking about the present situation. He was thinking of the future. That was a rich dad. He may not have had money in his pocket, but he had the mentality of a rich man. They were squatting with another family. He said that even the family that they were squatting with must not know that his dad had realized such amount of money from the sale of the plot of land to be able to send them to a private school. Otherwise, he would chase them out. So you have this kind of money. Go and use it to rent a house. He didn't use it to rent a house because he knew that house is going to, accommodation will be sorted. It's a matter of time. He sent these two guys to a private university. So this guy said when he got to school, he quickly befriended all the rich students. These rich students who would bring a huge amount of money to school. Is their pocket money, their stipend, surpassed his school fees for a session. So he made friends with them and he made sure that he positioned himself as an intelligent guy. So these rich kids would always come to him for advice to help them in their subjects and all of that. He would help them. He was even now choosing his friends. Okay, you are. And since he was a solution provider, they were drawing closer to him. As they were drawing closer, some of their money was also entering his pocket. And he started thinking, these my rich friends have money. What can I sell to them? So he started selling stuff to them because he wasn't the type that would start begging them for money. He was not looking for how to collect money from them without begging. So he started selling to them. And it was from that he was able to send himself through school. And no wonder he's very rich today because he realized and he learned how to be a good salesman from a young age. He sent himself through school, sent his brother, saw himself through school, saw his brother through school. Today, he's living in affluence, right? But I said kudos to his dad. Kudos to his dad. Such dads are very, very uncommon. So when you say I cannot afford it, it is a sign of mental laziness. Mental laziness. Even though both dads worked very hard, one will put his brain to sleep, one will, when it comes to money matters, one would exercise his brain. Just like if you don't go to the gym, you don't exercise your physical body, what happens? You begin to have body ache. That is your body, your joints, your muscles rusting, decaying, becoming stiff. Or somebody that goes to the gym every now and then, the person is putting his or her muscle to good use. So that kind of person would hardly have body ache because the muscles are being exercised, the joints, the entire body is working out all the time. That is the same way the brain works. The more you use your brain, the more it produces ideas, the more you stimulate it, the more it helps you think of how to become richer and richer, right? It's two that had opposing attitudes in thoughts. One that thought that the rich should pay more in taxes to take care of those less fortunate, but the other that said taxes punish those who produce and reward those who don't produce. One that recommended study hard so that you can find a good company to work for. The other that recommended study hard so you can find a good company to buy. One that said, the reason I'm not rich is because I have you kids, you children. You're the one gulping my money. That's why I'm not rich. The other that said, the reason I must be rich, can you imagine, is because I have you kids. His poor dad would say, I'm not rich because I have you children. You are taking my money away. I have to pay school fees. I have to feed you. I have and all of that. But it's rich dad said, the reason I must be rich is because of you. So you think of your children. Anytime you want to give up, think of them. You don't want them to go through the same thing that you're going through. There's an adage in my language, the Yoruba language, that says, "Iromet or kintoshi." It means that 3 generations should not wallow in penury or in poverty. Once 3 generations are already swimming in poverty, it will take the power of the Almighty God to redeem them, because it means that they are already swamping, drowning deeper and deeper into poverty, and the generations after them will be picking their brain, picking their attitude, carrying on the baggage of poverty. That is what it means. So do this for your children. The reason why you must be rich is because of your children and your children's children. I know a very popular man who said that he has secured wealth for even his children's children, not just his children, oh, his children's children, and the children to come after them, up to like his third or fourth generation. And this guy did not steal, at least as much as I know. He's not even a politician. He's a hard worker. He invests in real estate. God opened his eyes to opportunities, as in where people were saying, oh, we can't buy land here. This place is bush. He saw it. He acquired hectares, large expanse of landed property. And in the time of recession, he started selling. He still has so many of them. He has built estates. You know, he's thinking of his children and his children's children. That's the person I'm actually talking about. You know, thinking of his children and his children's children and the generations after them. I like that mentality, right? One dad encouraged talking about money and business at the dining table. The other forbade the subject of money to be discussed over a meal. One dad said, when it comes to money, play it safe. Don't take risks. The other said, learn to manage risk. One dad believed, yes, our home is our largest investment and our greatest asset. The other dad believed, my house is a liability, it's your largest investment. You're in trouble. Both dads paid their bills on time. Yet one paid his bills first before investing. The poor dad would pay his bills first and live on the rest, spend it on food and other essentials and other expenses. But the rich dad, did I say rich first or poor? I meant poor first, will pay his bills first. But the rich dad will pay his bills last. He will first of all use the money to earn more money, to invest and things like that. One dad believed in a company or the government taking care of you and your needs. He was always concerned about pay raises, retirement plans, medical benefits, sick leave, vacation, and other perks and benefits like that. He was so impressed, with some of his uncles that joined the military. Say, oh, when you retire, you're going to get gratuity, you're going to get a very robust retirement plan. He was feeling entitled. And the other dad thought that you should not have an entitlement mentality. Don't be entitled to all of these benefits. Work for your own. Work in such a way that you are not going to be dependent on the government's benefits, on gratuity. I'm from Nigeria. I'm a Nigerian. And sometimes I weep for pensioners in Nigeria. The situation is very, 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 very terrible. How can somebody work for like 30, 40 years? And in this 2024, the person's pension is 15,000 naira. 15,000 naira. 15,000 naira. 15,000 naira that cannot even take some people to a good restaurant to have a nice meal at one sitting. How? So imagine that such a pensioner did not make any alternative plan for the future, for old age. One of my dad's friends died when he went to queue for his pension in Lagos State that year. He slumped and died on the queue under the hot sun. It is a pathetic situation that you work for like 30, 40 years and then you now retire. You work so hard. You wake up by 4 a.m. so that you can beat Lagos traffic and get to work before 7. You now do that for 30 years, 40 years. And then you retire. They're giving you 15,000. Even if they give you 100,000 in this age and time, what is it going to do for you? Some of them still have children in the university. Yes. What will it do? And the government is not saying, let us increase it. Because of things are rising. Recently, the staff of a popular bank in Nigeria, they embarked on a big protest. One woman came out to speak for them. That her pension is 15,000 naira, 15K. I don't know what that can buy. I don't know what it can buy. Some of them have mouths to feed. Some of them are on medication. How are they going to cope? That is why you must not feel entitled. What the government or any company you work for is may pay you peanuts. You need to plan for your future. The terrible thing is that some of these people also did not see this coming. They didn't plan ahead. So they were too relaxed. They were too relaxed. They didn't think of other streams of income. They didn't think of starting businesses, right? So that's a mentality that we all should change. No matter how much you earn, even if you earn 5 million naira per month, have a plan B. Try to diversify, be investing, be saving up, be buying into assets. Buy assets, don't buy liability. Plan for your old age. I don't like this kind of stories because it breaks my heart. Really. I don't like it. The the other believed in total financial self-reliance, not you depending on having entitlement mentality. You know, entitlement mentality creates weak and financially needy people. He was empathetic about being financially, sorry, and he was emphatic about being financially competent. One that struggled to save a few dollars, the other simply created investments. One that taught him how to write an impressive resume so he could find a good job. The other taught him how to write strong business and financial plans so that he could create jobs. Being a product of two strong dads allowed me the luxury of observing the effects of different thoughts, the effect that different thoughts have on one's life. You notice that people really do shape their lives. People really do shape their lives through their own thoughts. For example, his poor dad would always say to himself, I would never be rich. He would always say that he would never, I'll be rich, I'll be stupendously rich in Jesus' name. His poor dad would always say he would never be rich. He would never be rich. This job. And you know what? That prophecy became a reality. He was never rich. He was not rich. Even though he worked so hard, he worked as a very top person in the Ministry of Education. He worked for the government in Hawaii, in America. He was not rich. But his rich dad, on the other hand, would refer to himself as rich. He would say things like, I am a rich man. And rich people don't do this. I remember when I was growing up, I used to do, is it role play they call it, when you just get into character and you're saying big things. I like to be dramatic. So I would go around and say, hey, Ma, thank you so much, Ma. Sit down, sit down, sit down. My driver is coming to attend to you. Hey, how much is the flight ticket? All right. I used to ask a lot like a rich woman. I'll just be, yes, thank you, role play. I'll just assume character and be talking big. I'll be saying big, big things, right? So from a very young age, I've always wanted to be rich. And thank God that God is moving us a little by little. You may not see what you desire right now, but your thought process, your thought pattern is going to determine whether you're going to see it or not, right? Whatever you think, you cannot rise above your thoughts. It is not possible. Yes. So his rich dad would say, oh, rich men don't do this. I remember sometimes I was saying, no, 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 no. I'm a rich woman, I can't shout. I can't do that. I can't go there. Have that kind of mentality. Whether it is a joke or not, life does not recognize jokes. There's some people that joke with all kinds of terrible jokes, negative jokes. The tongue is powerful. It is the most powerful part of the body. This tongue, as tiny as it is very, very powerful. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he, right? So what happened? The rich dad became eventually rich, and the poor dad became eventually poor. And I like what the author says here. Even when he was flat broke, as in the rich dad, after a major financial setback, he continued to refer to himself as a rich man. He would often cover himself by saying there's a difference between being rich and being broke. Broke is temporary. There's a difference between being poor and being broke. Broke is temporary. Poor is eternal. You may not have money right now. It doesn't make you a poor person, because what makes you a poor person is your mentality. If you are not poor in your mentality, then you are not poor in reality, right? His poor dad would say that he's not interested in money. Money doesn't matter. But his rich dad would say money is power. The power of our thoughts may never be measured or appreciated, but it became obvious to him as a young boy to be aware of his thoughts and how he expressed himself. He noticed that his poor dad was poor, not because of the amount of money he earned, which was very significant. It was a good amount at that time. But because of his thoughts and his actions, as a young boy, having two fathers, he became acutely aware of being careful which thoughts he chose to adapt as his own. Remember from Think and Grow Rich, that so many thoughts will come. You pick up so many thoughts from your own mind, from other people, from what you watch, who you listen to. But you have the power to determine which of them would go into your subconscious mind that will now eventually control your life. So, although both men had tremendous respect for education and learning, they disagreed in what they thought was important to learn. One wanted him to study hard, earn a good grade, and get a good job to work for money. The other one wanted him to study to become a professional, you know. Sorry, still the poor one. Wanted him to become a professional, an attorney, go for your MBA, do your PhD, and things like that. But the rich dad encouraged him to study to be rich, to understand how money works, and learn how to make it work for you. He said, the rich dad would say, I don't work for money. Money works for me. And at the age of 9, Robert Kiyosaki decided to listen and to learn from his rich dad about money. And in doing so, he chose not to listen to his poor dad, who happened to be his biological dad, even though he was the one with all the college degrees. The one with the college degrees was the poorest. And that made a whole lot of difference. Over the years, he reflected upon this poem. There's a poem here that talks about the road not taken. In life, a lot of people go the way of poverty. Have you ever realized one thing? That a figure can be put to the, rich men that we have in the world. Like they'll say, oh, the richest men in the world. 10, the 10 richest men in the world. The 20 richest women in the world. They can put a figure to it, right? But have you ever seen a figure put to poor people? Because they're in billions. They're in billions. You don't even know the poorest. There's competition. Who is now the poorest? I've never seen any post, or maybe you have seen, where they'll say the 10 poorest people in the world, except somebody that now really distinguishes himself to say, oh, he's the poorest, maybe to enter the Guinness Book of Records. I don't know, right? But you can put a figure to the number of rich people because there are not so many. It is difficult to be rich. That's why not too many people are rich, right? So the road not taken. A lot of people don't take the road to riches, to wealth, because it's not for everybody. Only those who are persistent, who can think right, can think, can take that route. So he made up his mind whom to listen to. And then he started educating himself about money. His rich dad taught him for 30 years. Remember, he started learning about money from the age of 9. So until he was 39, before the rich dad said, now, you know everything that I wanted you to know about money. You have grasped everything. His rich dad coached him about money for 30 years. He was very blessed for 30 years. And at 39, said, yes, everything I've been drumming into your skull has now entered. And truly it has entered. Money is one form of power. But what is more powerful is financial education. There is a way money works. I tell you. Money comes and goes, but if you have you gain power over it and you begin to build wealth. The reason positive thinking alone does not work is because most people went to school and never learned how money works. So they spend their lives working for money. Let me just get a good job in that company. Let me just get a promotion and things like that. Because he was only 9 years old when he started, the lessons his rich dad taught him were simple. And when it was all said and done, there were only 6 main lessons that his rich dad taught him for a period of 30 years. He just kept saying these 6 lessons in different ways. And we're going to be learning about them in subsequent chapters. Yes, what are these 6 lessons? And these 6 lessons were meant to be his guideposts that assisted him and his children to grow wealthier and wealthier no matter what happens in a world of increasing change and uncertainty in a world where people are shouting economic hardship, economic downturn. Is it downtime? Or downturn? You know, he and his children were getting richer. Don't you want that? I want that too. I don't want to join people to be complaining. Oh, the country is hard. The country is hard. I don't want it. Those are downturn. Thank you. English. Those are one that can be complaining. It is a personal choice that I have made. You will hardly catch me joining people to complain because I don't want to put my focus on that. I don't want it to enter into my subconscious mind that the economy is hard. Because in the same country that people are saying the economy is hard, some people are buying Rolls Royce, Cullinan. How much do they call it? The last time somebody was talking about it, said it was sold for at least ₦1 billion. The guy that I said that is that sent him and his brother to a private university by selling a plot of, he said in his estate, a few of his neighbors have Rolls Royce. In Nigeria, I'm not talking of another country. In Nigeria, they have Rolls Royce, as in when they are all going out of the estate in the morning, they will all be driving together. Rolls Royce Cullinan, billion, billion. Don Jazzy donated 100 million naira to NGO. Well, do you think Don Jazzy will be joining people to say, oh, the country is that? See, because, like I said, it's a personal choice. I don't want the politicians, I don't want the leaders who don't even know the direction, who are heartless to control my own destiny. They cannot control my destiny. They cannot control my thought pattern. I have the power over my own mind and what I permit. Because even my Bible tells me that when men say that there is a casting down, I will say that there is a lifting up, right? So it depends on what you see. Where some people are seeing problems, some people are seeing opportunities. We all. Thank you very much. Connection lost for a second there. It depends on what you see. I need to go now before my connection is lost again. Thank you so much. We've actually come to the end of chapter 1. So tomorrow we're going to start with the 6 lessons that his rich dad taught him, right? And that will be chapter 2. Chapter 2, lesson 1. Let me tell you the title. The rich don't work for money. You want to know how, right? So no, we're not meeting tomorrow. Tomorrow is Sunday. We're going to meet on Monday by God's grace. Oh, yes. Don't miss it. If you have this book, please read ahead so that we can be on the same page. You know what I mean? Thank you so much. God bless you. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like this video. I can only see one like here. Don't be stingy with your likes. Like this video, drop a comment, subscribe, share the video, call your friends to come and learn. God bless you. I remain Olaide Agbaje, also known as First Lady. And on this channel, I inspire you to live intentionally. We'll meet again on Monday, 9:30 p.m. Nigerian time by the grace of God. Until then, be intentional. Bye-bye. Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you so much for all the comments. God bless you.